talkers of the day, guys. This really interesting. People in New Hampshire, they are feeling the burn just weeks out from the primaries. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders has now overtaken former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in the latest CNN WMUR poll. That is amongst likely Democratic voters. Now, the new poll, which was conducted before Sunday night's debate, shows a 60 to 33% favor for Sanders, a 10-point increase from the same poll conducted in late November. However, Sanders supporters, this is the problem. A lot of that support rests heavily on a group whose participation in the primaries is less reliable, notably younger voters and those who aren't even registered Democrats. In New Hampshire, one of the few states that you can participate in a primary without being signed into the actual party. Now, Sanders' popularity, a lot of people are saying, is due in large part to speculation about Hillary Clinton's honesty. That is something that has dogged the former Secretary of State since the start of her campaign. However, when it does come to national security, the new poll suggests that voters do favor Clinton over Sanders, with a 55% believing the former Secretary of State is better suited to deal with ISIS versus a 26% support for Sanders on the same issue. If you're keeping score, if you're keeping track on your calendars, the New Hampshire primaries, they are happening February 9th, just days after the first big test for our candidates, the Iowa caucus. That is set for February 1st.
It's coming up fast.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting. If you watch the Sunday night debate, we talked about it Monday morning. It really is interesting how they are really starting to dig in. I mean, across the board, the GOP, the Dems, they're all digging in. But it's interesting to see because to me, Sanders is obviously he calls himself a social democrat or a democratic socialist rather. Sorry, my mistake. Which to me is a very, very bold statement to make about yourself. Obviously, it could play very well amongst the lefts and people in the left. But how is that going to play out when you get to the general population, the general election? That's why typically you see the moderates.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that win the primaries. And that's been the case. Years ago, I equated back to Howard Dean. I felt the same way about Howard Dean, that he was very left. He had a really strong popularity, but that far left leaning ultimately cost him the primary.
Well, and we've been talking about this, for a while now, waiting for these underdogs to kind of get up to the front runners, You kind of wonder if his performance earlier this week is, maybe people are thinking about that because it kind of seemed, with a lot of people saying he had a strong performance and won, that debate. It's interesting, though, because I just cannot imagine being that close. It's not like it's ever really a landslide.
Yeah.
And there's multiple ways. I mean, it's not like a straight path to presidency. There's multiple ways that they can get there.
Yeah,
So it'll be
exactly. I mean, they can win, a certain primary that, the caucus could favor Clinton, and Bernie Sanders. I mean, we've got some really important ones, New Hampshire, South Carolina, the Iowa caucus. These are all big testing grounds, and that's where we're going to start seeing the mettle of each of these candidates and their staying power. Again, because as you said, the pathway is long, arduous. There's a lot of hooks, a lot of turns and twists. So once they pass and once they get that primary, that's great. But now you're onto the general electorate, which is going to be a much more difficult sell if you lean really far to the right or really far to the left.
We'll see what happens. A lot of developments coming there.